And then we're going to go live to Facebook. And then I'm going to introduce you to the viewers. Welcome, 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 gems. Thank you for joining me. I am Pastor Monique Ray, and thank you for joining Jim's Encouragement Discussion. And I thank God for my pastor, overseer, Dr. Meredith Jordan, releasing me for this assignment on today. And I am so excited about this assignment on today. Our topic is Fight to Live. And I'm excited with our guest panelists. One of our guest panelists is unable to make it due to unforeseen circumstances. And we just thank God for the guest panelist, Aimee Worlds, on today. I thank God she is going to introduce herself to our viewers. And she's going to tell us a little bit about Black therapy. And Aimee and I actually grew up together. We used to attend the same church together years ago when we were young, and she's much older than me. No, that's not true. I'm actually the older sister. But we actually attended the Way of Holiness Church at 1006 Fulton Street. But our families actually go way back, way past that point in our lives.
Very much
but
so.
She is going to introduce herself. And she's going to tell us a little bit about Black therapy. Aimee?
Thank you so much, Monique. Actually, thank you for inviting me today. I really appreciate you reaching out and allowing me to kind of speak about what I do, my purpose as a life coach. So Black Therapy was an organization that I started about 12 years ago, and it was birthed from pain. Actually, it was birthed from transitioning personally and really trying to get a full range of what I needed to live a quality life, a quality lifestyle. Because you can live, and feel like you're really not grasping why you're here, or you're existing, but you're not necessarily striving and thriving, So I wanted to, that's where Black therapy was birthed from, understanding that I wasn't the only person who was possibly going through this kind of transition. There was more women, and now I even coach men who really want those changes as well. So that's just a little bit about Black therapy.
Awesome, awesome. And isn't it so profound that most times our purpose is always birthed out of pain?
Yes. It's like giving birth.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for joining us on today, and thank you for taking the time out just to come and just to talk to our viewers how it's important to live, to fight to live.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we push ourselves to the back burner. A lot of times we think we don't matter.
Exactly.
And a lot of times we put so much ahead of ourselves because we carry and wear so many hats. And the one hat that we often forget about is self.
Yes.
So we are just coming together just to speak to our viewers on today that how it's important to not forget about self, and how it is so important and so vital to fight to live. To fight to live.
Yeah. So one of the things, I'm so happy you said that, because one of the things I'm always having to clarify for my clients in the beginning, the difference between selfish and self-love. Because I think sometimes when people hear that you're working on yourself or that you're getting focused on yourself, they equate that to selfishness. And there's a part of them that become very resistant to it, almost like there's a guilt or shame associated with really focusing and spending time with aiding and healing for yourself. So there is a very big difference between being selfish and self-love, and that's something we can explore as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you are so right, because a lot of people do equate that to believe that it's a selfish mentality or it's a selfish act. And no, it's not a selfish mentality. It is not a selfish act. It is very important to have self-love. It's very important to take care of self. And because of the different umbrellas and hats that we wear, if we can't take care of ourselves, then we can't take care of anyone else. Or we won't be good to anyone else. We would just be going through the motions and really not living. And I find that today, a lot of people are going through the motions, but they truly are not living.
Absolutely.
And now it's time to not go through the motions, but to actually live. And to live a purposeful life and a productive life.
Right. And you know, clarifying that for people, right? So selfishness is birthed out of fear. You know, it's ish. And so the whole ish in selfish means that it's not even really permeated on self. It's permeated on looking outside of yourself and having lack and fear. Versus self-love is birthed in love. So it's the complete opposite of the equation. It's about going through your life, but having a full cup. It's giving to others from fullness and not giving to other people and being drained in the process. So there's a difference between the two. And a lot of times, unfortunately, most people are giving and they're drained and exhausted because they're not doing it from a full cup. They're giving it from a cup that they haven't even spent time to ensure that it's filled within themselves. So that's what I want to kind of switch up for people and in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because now is the time for us to really behold. Behold, because we're more effective when we're whole.
Right.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And so let's talk about the healing process. Let's talk about that. How was Black therapy? How did it help you heal?
Well, so I began my venture by really just trying to work on the physical part of me because I was literally drained and exhausted. And I thought, okay, well, let me just get better. And if I can control what I put in my mouth, I can control my world. I just literally remember saying that to myself. Can I control what I put in my mouth? So it started for me in learning the discipline of fasting, learning the discipline of eating clean. And I struggled with that at the time, you know, and I remember my body responding to that with asthma and adrenal fatigue. I was exhausted. I would drink 5 and 6 cups of coffee a day trying to keep up. And so I knew I had to make some changes. But really what pushed it for me was I ended up having an exam and they found a lump in my breast. And I remember thinking, oh, is this cancer? Like, what is this? At the same time, my half sister had the same event. And we both ended up having lumpectomies within the same month. But mine was not cancer and hers was. And that just really brought it home for me, the importance of taking care of my body and how even in stress that I was creating cells in my body that was unhealthy. And so it started with me just trying to get on the health and fitness track. But I eventually learned that I could not achieve that if I didn't deal with what was going on in my mind and in my heart. So it was mind, body, and spirit. I had to deal with those things. Otherwise, I could starve myself all week and it wasn't going to work.
And you're absolutely, absolutely correct. And I actually had the same surgery back in 2011. And thank God it was not cancerous. So God is good. And
Yes.
you're right. Everything that we do starts in the mind.
Right.
And some people don't realize that everything that we do, it begins in the mind itself. And it's important because when we actually can train our mind to do the positive things, to eat positive, to be positive, to think positive, to act positive, then we begin to actually shape our lives. We begin to shape how we act. We begin to shape our behavior. But it's about self-control.
Yes.
It's about self-control. And a lot of people don't have self-control or discipline.
Absolutely. And you know what's not helping people? I know for me, I learned how important it was to recognize that my food was my medicine, and that food had the ability to shift not only my hormones, but how I would respond to the world. Like, that's how powerful what I put in my mouth.
Yeah.
So one of the scriptures I think of is with Daniel. You know what I mean? Like Daniel's a prime example of that, right? He understood that if I eat it one way, that this was not going to work out for me, and I wasn't going to have revelation. I wasn't going to have that spiritual component active in my life. And so he was willing to apply the discipline and not conform to what everybody else was doing. Because for him, it was about revelation and understanding and being able to use his gift in such a way that it gave him not only notoriety, but rank and role.
Absolutely.
And so that's what really brought it home for me, was like, okay, Daniel is the example of where I need to go in my spiritual life so that my everyday life is changed.
Yes, absolutely. And you're right. Daniel is an exceptional example of what you just said, because Daniel was very disciplined. And it didn't matter what was going on around him or what people were doing. He did not deter from what God instructed him to do and how God instructed him to move.
That's right.
And you're absolutely right. He is an awesome example of being disciplined.
Absolutely. Can you imagine if Daniel was given into a cheeseburger and a hamburger, whatever, he would have slept harder. His conscious, his ability to hear from God would have been overweighed by, just his physical body being overwhelmed. He understood that to eat from the garden, to eat clean, gave him the ability, his physical body the ability to yield to the messages that God was sending to him subconsciously. So that was very powerful for me, for God to like really point that out and say, you can do this too.
Yes, because Daniel was definitely a man. He was definitely a man of faith, obedience, prayer, and fasting. Yes, absolutely. We can all learn from the book of Daniel.
Amen.
Absolutely. So how did this transition for you put you on a road of inner healing to enable you to do an outward healing?
Absolutely. So it was when I dedicated myself a little bit more, understanding the power of prayer and meditation. Now, you and I grew up together, and so we knew the power of prayer, undoubtedly.
We have stories. Night shut-ins. Those Friday night shut-ins at the Way of Holiness Church. And yes, and we never knew when the pastor was going to walk in, so we knew that we could not be comfortable and sleeping, but we better be out there carrying and calling on God's name. And you know what? Shut-in is necessary. Laying posture before God is necessary. It's our foundation. It's our roots. And it taught us how to pray. It taught us how to tarry. It taught us the capability of knowing that it's not always a popcorn prayer. It's not always a 5-minute prayer or a 10 or 15-minute prayer. Sometimes you have to labor for God for hours and hours and hours. And I remember even when we had the opportunity to go to Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
And yes, I remember that upper room experience where, it was about praying. And and intercede. And back then, we didn't really understand what intercession was, but we knew what travailing was. We knew what praying was. And the old mothers, they stood over us, and it was like, no, y'all gonna pray this. Y'all gonna pray. No. You know, I remember when we was in Chicago, Illinois, and we was praying, and we was in the Italian service, and we was praying, and when we thought we was gonna get up, those old mothers came and was like, no, baby, you gotta stay back down there. You're not through yet. You're not finished yet. You're not finished. And I like, I used to wonder, like, well, how you know I wasn't? How you know? No. You didn't get it yet. When we was carrying for the Holy Spirit, you didn't get it yet. No. That's not it. And I do remember a lot of times on Fulton Street, we would go in there on Friday night and come out on Sunday.
Yes. So that power, you know, that power taught us the beginnings of humility, of surrender to authority, of actually speaking our heart to God, right? So we learned the power of speech, of the yield of word, right? So that was something that we both grew up accustomed to. But I will admit that for me, the meditation with prayer came much later. Understanding that meditation was listening.
That's right.
And it wasn't so much talking.
Come on.
And so I had to learn the discipline between both, the joy between the two, right? So, you know, right now my spiritual life looks like I pray and I, you know, submit myself to God in gratitude and prayer. But then I spend time just getting quiet and listening to God. Just silence. It's in silence that God can speak, right? And so teaching other people, I have a meditation class that I teach to people about learning how to silence the thoughts, because a lot of times we get, you know, distracted by all the things going on in our head, just the same way we can do in prayer too. Because I remember being that little girl praying, and I was thinking about, oh, what if I was home? What could I, you know? So your mind's not going to be over. There. Yeah. How much longer, right?
Because I'm missing my friends.
But in meditation, you really see that duality in the spirit and the mind, where you're fighting to keep focused on listening to God, tuning into God, really hearing God's voice versus your voice, which if you're not careful can be very, very similar. It can, if you're not tuned into knowing the difference. So that was something that helped me to really get grounded and in my spirituality, but not only in that, in the things that I wanted to see manifest in my life. So those were the components. It was getting really clear on what prayer meditation would look like for me, getting really clear on what my day would look like, really understanding the power of intention and understanding, okay, I am shaping the experience that I'm living in this life. It's not just happenstance. You know, it just don't oops and happen. I have to be a good steward over my time. I have to be a good steward over what I put my energy into, who I put my energy into, you know. So it was really just owning the power of God within me that can change the world of not only myself, but of others. And so that's for me, that's where things really took off.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. A lot of times we are so busy praying and talking, but we never sit still to listen and to wait for God's response. And, you know, it's not always a quick response. You know, because sometimes God wants to see, how bad do you want it? How bad do you actually want the things that you are praying to me for? How bad do you want your purpose? How bad do you want your destiny? Do you want it enough that you're going to wait on my answer, or are you going to go ahead of me? Because you heard your own voice.
Yes.
And you didn't hear my voice. So absolutely, we have to be still and just to hear God and hear God clearly. Absolutely. And you said that, you know, using this method was a way of you healing internally.
Absolutely. Because, you know, when you pray, like I said, that is an act of surrender. It's an act of understanding that, hey, I am only in control of very little, and it has to do with me. All things outside of me is under God's control, and I have to submit myself to the control of God. You know what I mean? And in that surrender, in that place of humility, then prayers can be answered, right? But it's also owning that when you meditate and you combine the two, I am surrendering my mind space to hearing the words of God, to in obedience, I'm going to listen to the frequency that God is pulling to me and for me, like really getting clear on the voice of God versus the voice of self. And a lot of times, many people can't hear it. That's why they run to other things to say, what is God saying? And it's like, God speaks to his children every single day. What parent doesn't speak to their children? I know I have 3 kids. I yell and talk to them all the time. I love my children, right? So what I have to remind people is, if being a child of God means that your father is speaking to you at all times.
Yes.
Are you tuned in?
Are you tuned in?
Yes. Are you in a place to listen?
That's the key, because we find that a lot of people are not tuned in. A lot of people are not plugged into the source, and God is our source.
That's it.
And a lot of people are not plugged into the source because they're too busy hearing their own voice. And that is why it's very crucial to understand and hear the voice of God in order to bring about healing. And like you said, it's about humbling ourselves and submitting ourselves to the will of God concerning our lives, because that's another thing. A lot of people do not like to submit to the will of God. Why? Because a lot of times the will of God is going opposite of what people want to be able to do. So if the will of God is opposite in what people want to do, then why do they want to actually submit to the will of God when it takes them out of what their will is? So you're absolutely right. It's giving up our will and taking on the will of God concerning our lives, for our lives, in order to be able to come to a place of healing, a place of wholeness, not just healing, but to be whole in every area of our lives.
So let me tell you about, I not to interrupt you, but that I had to get revelation on that too, about the will of God for me, because I was one of those children who was afraid to submit entirely to it. Like, oh gosh, what is God going to have me doing? Something crazy. It's as wild as that sounds to say it out loud. That's what I thought. Oh, I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to have to deal with that. And what God taught me was that his vision from me was so much more beautiful and broader than mine could ever be for myself.
Absolutely.
Every single time I was willing to settle with something I thought was grand, God would show up in my life with what he wanted me to have. And it was like, it would floor me. I'm like, I didn't even expect this for me.
Absolutely.
So what I learned was that God's will is always more beautiful and greater and grander than our own. So trust it.
Absolutely.
To trust it, right? Because if we submit to that God can see so much broader, and God is so much more, and God wants more for his children than sometimes we want for ourselves.
Absolutely.
If we really embrace that, then submission. Yes, submission and obedience becomes really easy. It becomes that yoke that Christ was talking about. Take my yoke upon me and learn of me. For my yoke is easy and my burdens are light. So why do we try to act like God is heavy, like it's going to be too much? It's like, that in itself is a falsehood, right?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. and you're right. I believe that, I know for a fact, Aimee, you and I both ran for years. We both ran for years from God. And because we thought that our will was so much better. But now we realize, and I thank God that we both realize now that God's will for our lives was so much more than what we ever thought we can imagine or possible. And but it's coming to that place of surrenderance. It's coming to that place of saying, okay, God, I'm not running anymore from your will, but I'm not going to run from your will, but I'm going to run to your will. I'm going to embrace your will for my life, because, and it puts me in mind of there's this photo that circulates on Facebook, and it's with Christ, and he has this big, huge teddy bear behind his back. And the little girl has this little teddy bear in her hand. And he's telling her, he has his hand reached out to her, asking her to give him the teddy bear. But she is saying, but I love it. But she didn't realize that he had a bigger teddy bear behind her back. And when I think of that, I think of how I used to be. I didn't realize that God had that big teddy bear behind his back waiting for me to give up the teddy bear that I wanted, that I thought was so great and so grand. So you are absolutely right. And when we actually surrender to the will of God, is really where we can begin to fight to live. It's really when we can begin to heal, because that's when we give him our complete yes, then we can begin to heal and become whole in him, not in ourselves, not in our circumstances, but in him. And he can do what he needs to do inside of us to help us heal from life disappointments and life, things that we have experienced and gone through life that has hurt us or damaged us. Because the thing about it is, when we go through things in life, that yes, we do get hurt, we do get bruised, we do get damaged, but we have to deposit all of that back to God. We have to give that back to him so that we can come to a place of true healing. So you are absolutely right. First love and loving yourself and self-care and fighting to live, it starts with self-healing internally. Because when we work on what's going on in the inside, and like you said, what's going on in our minds, our thought patterns, what's going on in our heart,
that's another place.
That's another place that so much can go on in that heart. And if we're not careful, it will hinder, it will hold us back. It would discourage us. So when we start dealing with what's going on in the mind and in the heart, then we can come to a place of wholeness in God, where we can begin to shape our lives according to the will of God for our lives.
Absolutely. When it comes to the heart, one of the things that I experienced in my walk with God was I prayed this prayer. I said, God, show me your heart and show me my heart. And that was a very powerful prayer.
Yes, it
because
is.
there was areas in my life that I thought, oh, I got this straight. I know I'm pretty clean on this. I'm doing the right thing. And God showed me, no, not so much. I'm going to show you your craftiness here, your jealousy here, your fear here, your selfishness here. And so it was that again came with humility, like, oh, I see that ugly part of myself.
Yes.
And thank you for loving me despite those things, right?
Absolutely.
But when you get really clear on your heart and you see that, the humility allows an alignment between the mind and the heart. When you're in alignment, now you can hear the voice of God. Now you hear it with clarity. It doesn't come in fuzzy with distractions and other people's voices, your mama's voice, your grandma's voice, and everybody else's voice. Now you can hear God because you're aligned.
Absolutely.
And he can work through the physical manifestation, the spiritual manifestation. It becomes a lot more in sync, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right. And it's very important to be in alignment with God. And a lot of times you're right, we think that we are when we're really not. And you're right. And it's a matter of saying, God, show me the ugly side of me. Because the reality of it is we all, every last one of us, have an ugly side.
Yes, we do.
Or have an ugly side that we have to bring to God and say, okay, God, work on the ugly side of me. Work on that. Right. Work on that part. That hidden part that I may know or that I may not even know. But work on it. Do that internal work so that I can be in alignment to your will, to your heart, to your ways, so that I can begin to shape the thoughts that I have and that's going on in my head because of of situations, or because of things that we have gone through, and what's going on in the heart, what's going on in the heart as well and stuff. So, yeah, that heart can be something. That heart can be something, and that mind can be creative.
Yes.
The mind can be creative, and the heart can be something. But when we give that creative mind and that something heart to God, God can do a new thing inside of us that will grow on the outside of us. So it's very important. It's very important. And now it's this time for us as people just to fight, just to be able to live, and not just not exist, but to live, and to live the life that God created us to live. Live the life. And it comes to actually looking in the mirror and asking those hard questions. Looking in the mirror and asking yourself, like, how do I feel at this moment? I'm pretty sure that there have been times that throughout your course of 12 years of Black therapy that you had to look in the mirror and say and realize and ask yourself that question: how is Aimee feeling at this moment?
Oh, absolutely. One of the challenges for people on this journey is a lot of times they look in the mirror and they don't even recognize who they see. Sometimes people can be so out of sync with the person in the mirror that it's hard to really ask, how am I feeling? Because they don't even recognize what's staring back at them. So it's a chart in realizing, okay, I need to reconnect with the mind, the body, and the spirit. A lot of times people don't see the success that they would like to manifest in this lifetime because they're disconnected. They're not, they don't understand the wholeness, the synchronicity of it all, that in being human, that we're more than just flesh, that we are spirit, and that God does have to renew the mind. They're kind of out of sync with that. So, for me to be able to look in a mirror and say, who am I, and be clear on it is a huge thing. So that's something that when I work with clientele, that's something that we have to work on. A lot of times I'll ask someone to look in the mirror and tell me who they are, and they'll just burst out in tears. You know what I mean? Because it hurts, or they don't like that person staring back at them. Or I get this a lot. Sometimes people feel like how they feel on the inside and what they look like on the outside is not the same.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? They feel out of body. They feel like this isn't right. And so it's a lot of pain there. There's a lot of healing that's needed so that they can slowly get back into the alignment of what's inside permeating on the outside, the love inside out, right?
Absolutely, because I remember a few years ago, I had went to a women's fellowship with Fashion for His Glory, and that was one of the exercises that we had to do. We had to go up there and we had to speak to the person in the mirror, and we had the mirror in front of us, and we had to speak to it, and it was so powerful. I even had used it at one of Gems for Christ fellowships, where God had me to go out and buy each person a mirror and had them to look in the mirror and talk to the person in the mirror. And it is so profound that when you look in that mirror and you have to actually talk to that person in the mirror, and you have to actually go deep to a lot of scars and a lot of wounds that we have encountered through life, because we go through a lot of things that a lot of times we hold it in the inside, because we think that if we don't talk about it, that it will bring about a healing, or it would just evaporate and just disappear. But when we don't talk about those issues and we don't talk about those things, it's not that it just evaporates and it doesn't exist, but what it does is it takes root in our spirits. And it starts to form how we perceive things to be. It starts to manifest in our behavior, manifest in our actions, manifest in how we interact. And the thing about it is because we are burying it. And now is the time to no longer bury it, but to actually talk to the person in that mirror, address the issues in that mirror, address the hurt, address the pain, address whatever needs to be addressed, but work on it so that we become better and we become whole and healed in our lives. So absolutely, that is so important.
I agree with that. That is a part of the self-love, because one of the things I teach is when you're loving yourself, you forgive yourself for those things that you may be holding a grudge. A lot of time forgiveness, again, not for the other person, is for us.
Absolutely.
And so there's trauma that we encounter in our lifetime. We hold on to those trauma. Like you said, they take root in our personalities, but it really comes from a place of not dealing with that trauma, not really loving ourselves through that trauma. So it could have happened when we were 8 or 9 years old.
Absolutely.
And that little girl is still damaged in us.
Yeah.
There's that inner child is still in conflict. And so being able to reach back into that little child in ourselves and give her comfort, let her know it's okay. Let her know that she's loved. Absolutely. That is part of the healing as well, as getting reconnected with where the trauma began, pulling up the root from its root.
Yes.
And really looking at it and saying, that part of me that was wounded at that time, I forgive you, I love you, and it's going to be okay. And I'm here for me. I'm here for myself, right? And so then you begin to heal that part of you that was fractured, maybe in childhood, that has altered your personality into adulthood, but that is the self-love.
Absolutely. And it's so ironic because the other day I had put on the Jim's timeline that when the little girl is healed, the woman can show up.
Amen. That's a great one. That's awesome.
When the little girl is healed, then the woman can actually show up. But the woman cannot show up until that little girl get healed.
You got to heal her.
You got to heal her.
And that's love.
That's love.
She's, a lot of times that little girl within ourselves, a little boy within himself is still running, is still feeling not safe. It's still feeling like it has to defend themselves against the world. It's still trying to understand why they were abandoned or disregarded or rejected. And so really looking at that part of ourselves to where the trauma began and understanding the whole spectrum of what took place and how to love ourselves in spite of it.
Absolutely.
That is a key component of the healing process to get to a place where you're living a quality life.
Absolutely. And like you said, it first starts with forgiving self first for what had happened and what has happened or what's happening. And then it's forgiving the offense. It's forgiving the one that actually did it or
releasing
it. And then not all pain is caused by others. Some pains are self-inflicted. Sometimes, we can do more damage to ourselves than anybody can do to us in the world.
Most of
the time. And it's how we internalize things. The viewers is saying on Facebook, one viewer said, yes, look in the mirror beyond the mirror image. Then you'll really begin to heal. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. When you look in that mirror and you look beyond that image that's looking back at you and you're going past that. And like you said, tapping into that little girl, that place where it first began, that root of it. And like you said, and that's what healing really is about. Healing is about digging up the roots. It's not about the surface. It's not the surface of the matter, but healing is about going deep down and digging up the root of it.
Right.
Because we can do a surface healing, but it's not really a healing. Because if someone step on your pinky toe or run the wrong way, it just comes out all over again. And that just lets you know that you are not healed. You did a surface appearance healing, but to really get down to the root of it. And this is the time in the season for us to get down to the root of things and to fight to be able to live, the fight to be able to heal, to fight, not to no longer just exist, but to live.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And to deal with the issues of the rejection, of the abandonment, you know, molestation,
Right.
abuse.
Right.
Not just
Absolutely.
physical abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse. There are
There you
so
go.
many different types of abuse out here. But dealing with
Absolutely.
it and speaking to that person in the mirror and let them know you are more than enough. You are
Right.
capable. You are valuable. You are loved. You know, you have to speak to those situations, but you have to deal with what's going on in the inside. And
That's the soul work.
That's exactly, absolutely. And that's with dealing with what's going on in the mind as well as in the heart. Absolutely, absolutely. Another question, what do I crave in life?
What do you crave?
Right, what do you crave in life? Because I find that the most thing that people crave in life actually kind of give an idea as to where they're at mentally at that particular time. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, cravings are interesting because cravings don't necessarily they're not always good for you.
Absolutely.
So you have to ask yourself, why am I craving whatever it is in life? If you took it back to when you're eating, right, you can crave salt, crave sugar, crave certain things, but usually when there's a craving, there's a deficiency.
Yeah.
So one of the things as when I'm in my coaching, understanding health, is to understand that cravings are usually linked to something within ourselves that we feel that's not enough. There's a deficiency, there's a lack. Yes. And so, you know, we pay attention to our cravings because they really do point us in the direction of where we may need to have some work. We may need some wholeness there, some whole food, some soul food, because we're craving something and we're thinking, oh, I need a relationship. Let's use that for an example. Yes. I crave a companionship. But, you know, in craving that, which is nothing wrong with wanting a companion, in the same right, do you have a relationship with yourself? Absolutely. Are you comfortable with yourself? Are you your own companion? Absolutely. You know, can you date yourself? Do you feel you know, full within yourself? Are you whole in your being? Because that companionship that you may be craving, you're feeling like that's going to complete you, and you can get that and still feel very empty. Absolutely. So that's what we want to pay attention to when it says, you know, what do you crave? Where is it coming from?
Yes, absolutely. And I like how you said, can you date yourself? And go take that farther. Can you even trust yourself?
Yes.
Can you trust yourself? Because I find
yourself?
Exactly. Can you respect yourself? Can you trust? Do you even value yourself?
Right.
You know, because if you don't value yourself, you can't expect others to value you.
No.
And yes, everything we do starts with self.
I have a saying, we teach people how to treat us.
Absolutely.
You know, so and usually when I'm working with someone and they're all, you know, they have this speech about, you know, how they're treated or mistreated and how people kind of crap on them and they're not appreciated. I say, okay, well, somewhere in there, you taught them that that's okay. And they're like, no, there's no way in the world I taught them. But you do. By the way, how you love yourself is reflective of how people see they can get away with loving you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you don't honor your word to yourself, you got to pay attention to why people don't honor their word when it comes to you. Yeah. And you say, well, you gave me your word. Why didn't you show up? Take that internal introspect and say, do you honor yourself when there's something involved? Are you as loyal to you? Are you devoted to you? Are you committed to you? So we have these expectations that are external when internally we haven't even fulfilled them within. Absolutely. So we have to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. And like you said, we have to fulfill them internally with ourselves within before we can even expect anyone else to do it. And that includes a relationship. If you don't love yourself first, then you should not even be in a relationship. Because the first person that you need to love is you.
And that person is not getting the best of you. They're getting a very watered down, discounted version of what may make them feel good, but ultimately it's not the genuine, authentic package of who you are and what you bring to a relationship. So if you really want to love someone, it has to start with you. And then when you start with you, again, it comes back to that full cup. And then you can just overflow into someone else's life. It'll be overflow, and they will really feel full with love. They will feel that same, the intensity that we want to bring into our relationships. They'll really feel it, and it'll be authentic. It'll be genuine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then also one of the questions is letting our viewers know how it is important to find out what makes them happy in life.
Yeah, learning that really takes connecting a lot of times with your younger self. Hold on one second.
It's okay.
My dog is trying to get my attention. It's really understanding how to reconnect again with that child, right?
Yes.
So one of the things I had to do when I was in my previous, wait, hold on one second.
Okay.
Go ahead. All right, he wants to stick with me. I'm sorry. So one of the things I had to get really clear on that I lost when I was married was who was I as a person, as an individual.
Yes.
And when I got clear on who I was, reconnected back to that person, then I could get really clear on what made me happy. And it wasn't big things. It wasn't material things. It was the small things, the little details that I had lost in a relationship. I had stowed that part of me away, and then I had to come back to her, and I was like, I love to draw. I love to go for long walks.
Wow.
I love to eat, certain cuisines. And I had to figure out, that did make me happy. Let me start doing that again. I love to roller skate. I love,
Oh, yes.
it's the things that I forgot that this was Aimee before a relationship was even, thought of in my young mind. What made me happy from childhood, I had to bring that forward. And then I was like, and I can still touch it, and it still makes me feel whole. It gives me joy. Absolutely. And so it was the little details. It was the small things.
Absolutely. And that's why it's very important and very crucial that when we do get in relationships, we don't lose ourselves. Because a lot of times what we do, we lose ourselves in that relationship, and we make that relationship so consuming about the other person that we lose sight of ourselves. And it starts off with little things.
Yeah.
Like little things, and then those little things become big things. And then the next thing you know, your life is totally centered around this person, and you really don't have your life, your own identity anymore.
Yes, that's it. We give up our identity. And we don't mean to do it. I think it's done out of sacrifice. So if you're like me, I believed for many years that love equaled sacrifice. And that meant sacrifice of identity for some weird reason. I really didn't get it, that that was the opposite. It was like, don't sacrifice the person that God made you. It's sacrificial in the sense of being able to give to someone, and doing it from a place of, I want this for you, I want this for us, but it's not sacrificing who God made you to be, please.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times, especially women we lose our identity. Yeah, we lose it in a marriage. We lose it with our children. And when those things don't work out the way our heart desires it to, we're like, who am I now? Like yourself, my youngest daughter is 16, and you have teenagers as well. And one of the things I say to myself is, okay, when she goes off to college, my role is going to have to change in her life. And then, yes, I can pay more attention to myself and do things that I've always wanted to do. But it's making that shift and that transition, and being able to make it seamlessly means that I have to be connected with myself way before that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so true. That is so true. Because and you're right. Because I do remember a time, like after I had, especially my first son, Oh my God, I would not go anywhere without him. I would not go on vacation without him. I would not take any me time without him. Where I
Aw.
went, he went. I'm never going to forget. One time I was going away and my mom was supposed to watch him for me. And just the day that we were supposed to leave, he came down with a fever. And I said to my mom, oh no, you can't watch him. He's going to have to go with me because he has a fever. And then she was like, wow. Okay, I didn't realize that. And I was like, yes. And then she said, that's funny. I said, what is? She said, I was able to manage your fevers. And I was like, oh yeah, but, and she was like, but what? And I remember being in that place. And even when I was in a relationship with their father, I remember that I gave everything. Like, I mean, it's like, I just totally lost my identity.
Yeah, you
My
do.
own identity.
You don't mean to. You
And
just lose it.
Right. It just happened. And that's why I say it starts off with the little things. And then it comes turn into these big things. And then it's so subtle that we don't even realize that we're doing it. Even after when the relationship was breaking up and it was crumbling, it was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? Like, oh my God, like what? And it was like, no, God has you. You're gonna figure it out, and God is gonna teach you and show you how to figure it out. And this time, when God gives you the strength to get your own identity back, you won't lose it for anyone else.
There you go.
You will love from a place of love. You will give from a place of giving. You will be there from a place of being there, but you will not give up your own identity because you are going to realize that, guess what? You matter as well.
Amen.
And it's important that you don't lose yourself in the process because it's very easy, especially for us as women, to lose ourselves in the process. And then we try to figure out like, oh my God, like, and then it's like, oh, but there was my whole world. And that's when God was like, no, I'm your God is your whole world. Not a relationship, not your children, not your situation, not your circumstances, not your career. I am your world. I am your everything. I am your all. Don't put anything in that place.
Mm-hmm. You know what? One of the things that I had to get really clear on with my intimate relationship with God, because I think that looks a lot different than, what necessarily someone can tell you when you know someone intimately, right? When you understand God intimately, you have a different correlation of what that looks like when God says, I'm first. And, one of the things that I learned was, God taught me how to see him from within me, the oneness, abide in me and I in you, right? So is understanding that in essence, I am the temple of God. You know what I mean? That I'm the church. So when you see the correlation between your father and you operate differently. And another thing I have to remind my my clients that are, especially the ones that are Christian, is that's why the communion exists, right? Because he said, let me remind you, the body of my body, blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh. Like he has to remind us that the DNA, you do this so that you can remember who you are.
Remember
So exactly, the oneness of God within you. When you get that part, then you're not searching outside yourself for fulfillment or to feel like, okay, I'm needed and I'm worthy and I'm enough. God shows you that you're that because you're his child, that you are a child of God. It is in your DNA. Your worthiness is in the DNA of him creating you. The breath that you breathe is the breath of your father. Inhaling the breath of your father, being able to speak and having life, that is a reflection of your father. So once I got that, it was like, okay, then I understand the primary of self-love and taking care of self and honoring the temple of God, which is this right here. Let me honor my temple by eating better, by not allowing negative things to just consume a whole bunch of negativity. It's about grounding myself against anyone. You're gonna deal with people who are not set. They're in a different place.
Yeah.
But you can still control how much you take of that, right? You can still decide, okay, there's so much toxicity I'm going to take on.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was something God, again, in the process of loving and seeking wholeness, God really showed me the oneness between God within.
Yes.
And really embracing that identity through God. Now I won't lose it. But
Absolutely.
yeah, when I first started, I was like you, I totally off center.
Totally off center and totally out of alignment with God.
Yes.
On
yes.
all fronts.
Even with children, hold on one second. Even with children, when my oldest daughter went off to the military, and I was so nervous about her being in the Navy, and this could happen, and we could go to war. And God was like, first of all, I allowed you to raise her to this point, but she's borrowed. Like, give my child back to me and stop. So in meditation, I saw myself laying my child back at the foot of the Father, saying, she's yours. Yeah, she's yours. You take care. Thank you for allowing me to have that influence and raising her. But it was borrowed influence. Now you take over completely, and I trust you. I trust you, God. I trust her plan for her life. So
exactly. And you just said something also profound. Trusting God and trusting the plans that he has for our lives. Speak to the viewers about trusting God and trusting in the plan that God has for their lives. How important it is.
Yeah, it's trusting God means that, again, that oneness that we see in ourselves when we identify that we are children of God, and understanding that when we have visions, when we have things that we see in our mind's gate, God planted that seed. That was a seed that if you allow God to take over now, as it grows and it manifests, that's trusting God. Because if we trust what we see with our natural eyes, we'll never be able to tune into what God shows us in our spiritual eye. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's like really trusting God is seeing, if God plants a seed in our spirit, if he plants a seed in our mind and he says, this is what I want for you, my child, this is where I see you going. Trust means that, okay, I wouldn't have it. It wouldn't be here if God didn't plant it, because this is his soil. I'm God's soil. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There's a story about the wheat and the tare. You know
what
I mean?
So go together.
Right. So you got to know what kind of soil you are. Where am I in this walk? And so if the seed was in your spirit, then you have to trust that God can see it through, that he can manifest that in your life and then some. Absolutely. But it's really understanding your position in the kingdom. That's what it comes down to. It's, it's going from servant to son. It's going, you know what I mean? It's really appreciating the sacrifice that was made on the cross. And owning that sacrifice. Like, I know where I fall within the whole order of things. And because of that, I know that, trusting the will of God and even my will, surrendering my own will, but understanding that the seed within me is planted there by God himself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why it's very important for us to really understand our perceptions of things, because our perception, it makes up our education, our environment, and our experiences. And those things shape our perception of how we perceive things to be and how we behave and how we act. And it's very important to trust God in our process, no matter what it looks like or feel like, because like you said, he loved us enough to give his son to die for us on the cross for sins and that he did not commit. It was our sins. It was our fault. It was our debt, but he paid a debt. He paid a price for us. And that's trust. That's love. That's love. And that goes to show how much he loves us. So if he loves us, and not if, but he loved us so much that he gave his son, then it's our job to trust him in the areas of our lives, to know that that his will is what's best for us.
Is what's best. And you know, that's, hold on one second, because I think my dog is going to continue to do this until I really, hold on one second. I apologize.
Not a problem.
Nadia, please keep more. I apologize. So I have a Yorkie that's out of control. He's only 10 pounds, but he swears he's a pit bull.
I saw the pictures of your dog on Facebook.
It's time for him to eat. So he was like, I'm not having it. I'm going to need you to wrap up this call because I'm not having it. So I had to I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things, I lost my thought. What was the last thing
we were talking about? Trusting in God in our process and trusting the will of God for our lives.
Yes. So one of the things that I had to learn in trusting God for the will of my life was really surrender. Mm-hmm. And we talk about fight. We talk about, fighting the good fight and putting on the armor of God, right? Yes. But in surrender, it's really accepting that it's already finished.
Yes.
Like from the cross, it is finished.
It's finished.
That was the final word.
That was the final word.
So it's when you understand that in retrospect, you fight differently, right?
Yeah.
Because you understand that what you're fighting is the influence of believing otherwise.
Yes.
It's fighting our earthly influence of forgetting that that he already won this thing.
Yes.
So that's something that a tradition that I've put in my day-to-day, and I actually urge anyone to do it if you don't do it already, is I went to a Christian store when we could. This was before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I actually bought the communion box. It came with like 200 communion pieces. Mm-hmm. And every time I feel myself becoming worried and scared, or something's keeping me up at night because I'm trying to figure it out, I know that I haven't given that thing over to God. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I practice by taking communion. I adjust my energy. Is taking communion, is taking in the body, taking in the blood, and saying, you know what, it is finished. It's like, do this in remembrance of me.
Of me.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? So when I do that, I'm remembering, hey, this is what was done. This was done for me. It's understanding that it is finished. Mm-hmm. It's understanding where I do stand. It's having that direct communication with the Father. Absolutely. And so I always practice that especially when I feel like, the me, my ego, my pride, mm-hmm. my fears are starting to usurp the will of God. Mm-hmm. And that reestablishes, that ceremony reestablishes my trust in God. So I'd encourage, others to kind of practice that as well. It doesn't have to be done every third Sunday. That's
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just about to say, the Word of God says, as often as you do this. So there's no preset time as to when you do it, because God says in His Word, as often as you do this. And He also said, let a man examine himself. So we have to take an examination of ourselves.
Look at yourself
prior to doing communion. And that's why it's important when we take communion that we do pray to God and we ask God to forgive us for our sins and to make us worthy. And if there's anything that's in us that's unpleasing, to remove it and to create in us a clean heart and renew a right spirit within us, so that we come back into alignment with the will of God. But the Word of God lets us know that as often as you do this, and He also said, let a man examine himself. So
that's right. And
God wants us to take that self-examination. He wants us to look in that mirror. He wants us to look past that mirror. He wants us to look and go deeper into the hidden things of our hearts, the hidden things in our minds, and to examine it and be like, okay, is my heart really align to the heart of God? Are my thoughts in alignment to the thoughts of God? And how do we know that if it is and if it's not? Well, when we work the word, when we walk out the word, when we live the word. It's very easy to preach the word, to talk about the word, but it's important to live the word of God. And when we are living the word of God, then we know that we are in alignment to the will of God concerning ourselves. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
centering, it's really examining your belief center too, because a lot of people say they believe, but they don't believe. They're not believers, you know. And so I actually question when we sit with things and we don't examine ourselves and we allow that to continue, and we're dodging the things that God is actually required of us to really take ownership of and be a steward of. I say to people, what do you really believe? Because you can't say you believe this and you're doing the opposite.
Absolutely.
You know, that you have to really center, okay, if I truly believe that Christ died on the cross for my sins, then my actions have to align with my belief. And if I'm not aligning, then I don't truly believe what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So that's something that I think anyone can do to really examine and get into, falling out before God and being surrendering our will to the will of the Father.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then it's just a matter of each day, just knowing that we're thankful.
Gratitude.
Just having gratitude and knowing that we have a thankful heart for what God is doing, a thankful heart just to be alive, a thankful heart just to be able to just speak, a thankful heart to just be able to move and have mobility, a thankful heart and having gratitude to knowing that our strength and our power, it doesn't come from us, but it comes from God, and that he work it through us, but it comes from him because he is the source of it all. So it's just a matter of knowing that as well. And then also knowing what brings, it goes back to what makes you happy and what brings joy to people's lives. Just knowing the things and that brings happiness and joy to your life. But then also with self-care and fighting to live, it also requires you recognizing your trigger points. Because everyone has a trigger point. So let's talk to our viewers about recognizing
triggers
and how to operate with their triggers. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, as a coach, I'm always asking questions. And sometimes those questions, I have this term, poking the bear, because a lot of times you could poke something and then it's when it's tender that a person reacts, right? Or when you ask that question that causes them to go back into their minds, things that they don't want to remember, or they've, filed away in their subconscious, and you ask that question, now you're triggering them to respond. Also, if it's tender, if it's something that you have a hard time hearing any negativity, like the criticisms of others, and then that person says something that hurts your feelings, now you're triggered. It's really understanding that has power over you. That your triggers have power over you. Until you can embrace and understand, well, first you got to understand what the trigger is and why it's there. And then embrace it. And I'll give an example of trigger. For me, when I went through my divorce, one of the things that could send me over the edge without a second glance within 2.5 seconds was if my ex-husband at the time would criticize anything about my mothering skills. I mean, I would go back crap crazy, and he just stand there like, what, how did we get there? But if I interpreted that in my mind that you are criticizing my ability to parent and love my children, I would lose it. And I had to really kind of sit back and look at that as the years passed. Like, why am I so emotionally triggered if this thing is said or when this thing is said. I learned that in doing that, I was giving other people power over my emotions, and that was a problem.
Absolutely.
Right? Because anytime you can't control your emotions, now that other person has control over your emotions. Absolutely. You've given self-control because you're reacting in such a passionate way. Yeah. So that was the first thing. And I thought, okay, that's not good. The second thing was to understand why it hurt so much. Why did that specific, those comments, if they were to come up, why it dug so much. And once I sat and I examined myself, I realized, oh, that's where that's coming from. That's where, it's the feeling of abandonment that I'm feeling, that I even have to be the only person making these decisions on my own. Yeah. I had to look at that and examine it. And once I did, I took the power away from that person and I owned myself. Yes. And I became more powerful. Now, it's a whole different relationship. I've done a total 180, but I'm not triggered because I took the time to kind of examine myself in that category to say, what is it about that? Yeah. Where is that coming from? Why does that bother me so much? Yes. And why am I giving away my emotional, stability? Why am I not regulating myself when it comes to this part of my life? Yes. And so it was owning self-responsibility, accountability that helps work through your triggers.
Exactly. And that's a word that our pastor says all the time. He says all the time that if you don't take anything else, be accountable for yourself. Yes. Learn how to take accountability. And I realize that when it comes to that word accountability, a lot of people do not like taking accountability. A lot of people don't like to look at self and see what part did I play in this? Because in any type of a relationship, we all play a part, whether it's good, whether it's bad, but we all have a part that played in it. And taking accountability is looking in the mirror and searching and realizing what was my part.
Right. And owning it.
And owning my part in it in order to get past it.
Yes.
And to get and to move on from it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another point I'd like to make about accountability. I usually as a coach, I'm an accountability partner to many, many people. And I remind them, because we associate accountability with being responsible for something that we may or may not want to be. I think accountability in itself is the highest compliment to human form. Because if I didn't think you could, I could never hold you accountable. I hold you accountable because I believe that you can do better. Mm-hmm. I hold you accountable because I believe in your capacity to learn more or to evolve into better. So things that people we don't hold accountable is basically saying, I don't trust that they can get beyond it. It's degrading to them. To hold someone accountable is the highest level of respect. It's saying, I respect you enough to point this out. I respect you enough that I believe that you can next level in this area, or that you can do better in this area. And that's why I'm holding you accountable, because you can. Yeah. So we want to redefine accountability for people, because sometimes they feel that as criticism or blame. And it's like, no, it's actually the opposite. It's a compliment.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like that. Absolutely. 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 And then it's also, we talked about just knowing about negativity and making sure that when it comes to self-care, that you don't surround yourself with too much negativity in your life, so that you can be able to get to the next level and so that you're able to grow. Because a lot of times, like you said, when we as people give people our emotions and our feelings, we become hostage to those people. So we have to be very careful with what we give our emotions and our feelings too. And actually, it just goes back to saying, like, we have to be very careful with what we give our attention to.
Absolutely. And another thing I've learned to do is examine the intentions of others. I examine the character of others. For instance, we've known each other forever and a day. If you were to point something out and I felt like, oh, you're kind of taken aback, what I'm always going to look back is, but what's her heart? What's her character like? What's her intention? And
Right.
with that, I should be able to receive better, right? Some people, their intention and their character is just totally off.
Absolutely.
So of course you can't receive from them, because you know that at the end of the day, they don't have the best intention for you. They don't want the best for you. And so you have to push that away. If possible, push that out of your life in general. You don't want to entertain that toxicity in your life over and over. It won't be a good thing. But if you have people with good character and good standards around you, and they have good intention toward you in your life, then you have to embrace criticism. You have to embrace intentionality. You have to embrace all of that to say, okay, I know that this person wants what's best for me. I may not like the way this tastes going down, but I know it'll be good in my belly. So that's the beauty of that.
That is so true. That is so true. And then it also goes back to, as people, we're very good at giving advice. But do we follow the advice that we give to others?
There you go. And, and I know you experienced this, that one of the most humblest things in coaching, and I tell people this on the assessment form, when they fill out the assessment and we meet our first meeting, I say to them, this is an exchange. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing in the world that I know everything and you're just sitting here like I'm, Yoda, and you can ask every question in the element and I'm going to have the answers. That's not the way that works.
Absolutely.
When you open up, when you are vulnerable, when you're talking to me, I'm learning just like you're learning. It's a vice versa. There's a reciprocation involved.
Yeah.
And so when you approach people in that heart set, that we're not all knowing, that there's always something I can learn from the person that I'm possibly helping. Yeah. I'm still learning something from them. Yeah. Then that's what keeps you, in a place where there's empathy and there's respect. Mm-hmm. Despite what you're looking at in front of you, you're like, you know what, this is still a human being, and but God, yes, I would probably be in that same situation, so you're able to, if that person gives you some advice or criticism, you're able to take it because you're like, you know what, at the end of the day, this could be good for me as well,
Absolutely. And that's why it's important to always remain teachable. Remain teachable. Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's a saying that says, I learned how much I knew when I'm probably saying it wrong, is to know what you don't know, mm-hmm. Is to learn how much you knew. It's like, the more that I learn, I learned that I don't know a lot of stuff.
Yes.
There's so much more that I don't know.
Yes.
So that in itself is humbling, right? That we're not all knowing. We're not omnipotent. We are human beings. So in that, we are all constantly learning. We're all constantly evolving. Yes. And so that has to be our approach with one another as well. Absolutely. There's always something to be learned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what would you tell your viewers? Because when it comes to fighting to live and to self-care and self-love, it's also important to look at what scares them. To look in the mirror and say, what scares me? Mm-hmm. What's holding?
Look at your fears.
Right. Yeah. Your fears and what's holding me back and why. So have there been a time in your life that you had to look in the mirror and confront your fears?
Yeah, I think that some people call that the dark night of the soul. When you are in this dark place, a shadowy place, and you're not sure how you're going to get out. You may sit there, you may be unnerved there, but you're hurting, you know? And so, yeah, absolutely. I went through that. There's times in sorrow and in loss, you enter back into those rooms. I know losing my mom 2 years ago, definitely my mourning was there. And, you know what the light is? The light becomes the truth. That becomes your light when you're in that dark place, when you are in a place of sorrows and shadow, and you're trying to understand your darkness. Is understanding what truth is. And truth can only be clarified through the word of God. It can only be substantiated through who God is in you, you know, understanding yourself through God's eyes.
Absolutely.
You know, and so for me, that's what I had to endure. And I think as long as you live, you're going to have phases in your life where it gets very dark. You know, that's part of the nature of living, where some days it's going to be like, you know, the you're getting a bunch of sunlight and it feels good. And then you have other times when it is literally like you're trying to figure out why you're here, or you're trying to remember, why am I here? Because if you feel so alone. And so when I hear that from my clients, one of the things I tell them is you need to go back to, but what is true? What is truth? Because truth is light.
Absolutely.
Right? So when you get back to the truth is that I am a child of God. The truth is that I am loved. The truth is that I am forgiven. The truth is, when you come back to truth, then that's how you see your way out of the darkness.
Absolutely.
But the darkness is there. It's actually in our humanity. It is half of us. We're half dark and half light, and whatever we put energy into is what dominates us, right?
Absolutely.
So you have some creatures here on the earth that are very dark because that's what they serve. That's what they put their energy into, versus, people who are, looking at God, looking at truth. And so they're putting more energy into the light, into the goodness. And in those cases, goodness and mercy is following them every day of their life. And they have to remember that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what can you tell our viewers on today in this COVID-19 pandemic situation that we're going through, how to be able to maintain self-care and to fight to live? So many people are working at home. So many people are essential workers and they're going back and forth. So many people are discouraged because of so much loss that has hit the nation. And not just adults, but children as well. So what can you say to the viewers as to, in this COVID-19, things that they can do to fight to live, to help with, what you teach as a mentor for Black therapy?
One of the things, and it's very simple, that I think people forget that they have the ability to do, especially with the word social distancing, is to get out and breathe and to let the sun hit their face. And I know that sounds really small, but you don't know how many people I talk to who have vitamin D deficiencies because they never go and even stand in the sun for a few minutes. And so just getting out of the house, if you have to drive somewhere or walk somewhere, but appreciate the elements around you that God has planted around you, from the air you breathe to the sun that's shining to just the capacity to walk. Not everybody has that ability to get out and walk, but it's moving your body, moving your physical body. And the reason why I put so much emphasis on that when it comes to dealing with COVID is because even the element of breathing, most people don't do deep breathing. They breathe very shallow, in and out, in and out. They don't even take a deep breath When you take a deep breath and you walk outside, you are putting oxygen into your lungs, into your brain, and it enables you to rebalance, to recalibrate. You know, you're actually causing your blood vessels to actually flow a little easier. Unfortunately, a lot of people are living sedentary lifestyles where they're just sitting at a desk all day, or they're sitting at home. And so physically, they're not putting themselves in a place where they're at they can actually conquer this thing. Get out, move your body, inhale some of that oxygen out there, exhale, exercise, eat well, try to eat as well as you can. You know, I'm not one to make people feel like they have to all be vegan, but eat as clean as you can, you know, whether it's fish, whether it's vegetables. If you have a plate and it's colorful, then you've done it. You know, it's not just about having some rice and bread and some meat. It's about adding some color to your plate. But that's quality living. It's putting things in your body, appreciating your body, getting out, because this COVID thing is a spirit. There's a spiritual component to it, but there's also a very physical component. And a lot of our people are passing away because the element of self-care with health was never there. And so this virus came in and just took them out quickly. And it's unfortunate, but if you're here and you're able to move and get up, then appreciate your physical body, your temple, get out and breathe and aid yourself so that the oxygen, you can think clearer when you take a walk. You know, appreciate the lungs that you have now, because people with COVID don't even have the ability, they have respiratory issues, right? And so it's really appreciating what you have now, gratitude. It's taking stock and ownness and the things around you that you can do today, not next week, but today. And today doesn't start every Monday. Today starts every day you get up. You get a new day to do better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what can you tell our viewers about how to handle and deal with the grief aspect of it as well? Because like you stated, so many have lost loved ones, so many have lost pastors, and so many have lost friends. And what can you tell the viewers what they can do to offset the emotional aspect?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things that I take very dearly is grieving and loss. I don't think we are really learned as Americans on the process of grieving. I think we're so quick, we're trying to get out of it, that we don't allow ourselves the phases of grieving. We feel guilty for grieving. I've even gone to funerals where, you know, even though they're trying to give an encouraging word, people try to disassociate with the emotion of that loss. So much so that they end up years later still holding on to it because they never allowed themselves to grieve. So the first thing I would tell someone is sit in it. Allow yourself to sit there. Process what happened. And as painful as that may be, sometimes it's sitting in your pain that makes it very clear on your gains as well. So whoever that person was that you lost, there's things that you'll never get anymore, that you'll never see anymore, but they also left the gift of life with you. What did their life mean to you? What did you gain through the experience of them? And how can you now go through your life and honor that gift that was given to you? So, but the first thing is allow yourself to sit and grieve, like that heart that's broken. Put some salve on it. Allow yourself to feel that thing because it's real. Ignoring it and acting like I got to numb out. And the people numb out in various ways: food, alcohol, drugs, people, you know, trying to numb out. That's not going to help you. Absolutely. Just register the pain, process it. But then in that pain, find the light. Find, okay, there was a gift of this being that was in my world. And what did they leave me as a gift? And how do I now take that gift to serve others or to expand myself? You know?
Absolutely. And what can you also tell the viewers about emotional eating? A lot of times people do emotional eating because of triggers, because of
Mm-hmm.
things that they have experienced, because of loss, because of depression. Um, there are a lot of triggers that is associated with emotional eating. And I know that in this COVID-19, because of everyone being really closed in into their homes, how can you and what can you say to them about emotional eating and recognizing those triggers?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, trust me, I'm not opposite of eating emotionally, especially when, as far as women, our hormones take over, right? Like we have to override hormones on a consistent basis when it
Yeah,
comes to, again, cravings and emotionally eating. But especially in times like now, where all you can really do is go get groceries, come home, cook and eat, or go get fast food, cook and eat. This
absolutely.
is something, here's something that you should take and just process for yourself. Am I eating out of boredom?
Yeah,
Am I eating because this seems like the easiest thing to do? And if you're eating out of boredom, then there's a bigger picture involved. There
yeah,
is a aspect of your life that is unfulfilled, and you need to learn how to fill it. I want to take us back to childhood. You remember when you'd be outside playing and hours would pass and you didn't even remember that you were supposed to come in for lunch. You
yeah.
know, you barely wanted to come in and eat
Really
dinner
want
because
to,
you were
you were
so busy
forced to
playing.
actually come in.
Yeah, you had to come in. All right, it's time to eat dinner. And
Yeah,
that's because what you were doing outside of the home, or what you were doing in your life, was so gratifying. It was so it made you so happy that food was the last thing on your mind.
absolutely.
So a lot of times you got to take register, okay, I'm eating this burger, I'm eating these chips and cookies, but is it really saying that I am bored and I'm not really applying myself to something that could possibly fill in those voids in my life? And
Absolutely.
how do I fill them in? What are they? Is it that I need more connection with people and I need to join maybe a network and I can talk to people? Is it that I need to, look at my gifts, and maybe I used to love to sing and I don't sing anymore. Maybe I need to listen to music. Like there's so much that fills you up as a human being. And if you're not careful, you'll ignore those things for the thing that is the easiest to grab. And usually that's food. So
Absolutely.
don't eat out of boredom. Look at what
Absolutely.
you're doing.
Absolutely.
um,
And that
yeah.
is so important, not to eat out of boredom, and look at why you eating and what you're eating. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is very important. It's very important. And especially like you said, with us being in COVID-19, with us being in the house and not being able to have the mobility that we had grown so used and accustomed to, and having to do the social distancing and whatnot. And it did bring about triggers for all of America. You know, because you're being in the house, and whereas before you're getting up, and if you have children, you're taking your children to school, and then you're going to work, or if you don't have children, you're getting up and you're going to work. And then when you're in the office, you're moving around in the office, and you're going from desk to desk, and or you're going outside for lunch, and then you're walking around, or you're going to the car, but you're moving. Whereas when COVID-19 came in, and then a lot of people had to do a work from home. So when you're in the house, and then a lot of the kids, of course, now they're doing schooling from home, where they're in the house. So they're not in the school where they have to go from class to class to switch their classes, or they're not in the school where they're able to go out into the playground to play with their friends and stuff. So it kind of shifted with how we operate as a people in America, all across this country. And it started, and even COVID-19, I would even say, maybe have depressed a lot of people, because it was a lot of loss, and these are the things that a lot of people don't want to deal with, but deal with the reality
Have
of,
to deal with it.
COVID-19 came in, and all our worlds got rocked upside down in one form or another, it was affected. We all got affected by COVID-19. And now here we are, and the numbers are rising again in different areas, and things are going on, and it's still going on and happening. And it's just a matter of making people mindful of, okay, yes, it's happening, but how can we, in this situation, make the best of the situation? In this situation, how can we still fight to live? In this situation, how can we still maintain self-care? In this situation, how can we still move and operate mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? How can we make sure that as a people in this situation that we're not just existing? We're not just going through the motions, but
we're
we
living.
are living. Absolutely.
So another tip I would say is creating a different routine, because what you described there was that, so many people were conditioned by their routine. Well, COVID allows you to create a different routine. And I'll tell you what that meant to me. Typically, I would have to start my workday. I worked from home before COVID. I had the flexibility of being a virtual worker. And one of the things I could adjust when COVID actually hit was my workout time, right? So I'm an early riser, and I know a lot of people aren't, but if you're not, I would say that's a whole other conversation we should do about circadian rhythms and getting into a cycle that actually reflects of what's happening in nature. So when the sun comes up, your energy should come up. When the sun goes down, your energy should go down. And so if you're in clock with nature, that should be the way your body works. But for me, it meant waking up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Now I can work out and take a hot shower and sit in my pajamas and work. And, so I got really clear on, it allowed me to get really clear on my me time before anyone else. Before I started with looking at anybody's email and caring about what anyone is asking me, I dedicated the first hour of my morning to myself to say, okay, I'm getting up, I'm going to pray, meditate, I give that 20 minutes, and then I'm going to go in my garage and I'm going to jump rope, and I'm going to go take a walk around the block. And then I'm going to come back, take a hot shower, and start work. But it was establishing a routine for myself. Another thing I do as a desk worker is every hour I stop and I stretch.
Awesome.
I don't allow myself to just sit in one place for over an hour without getting up and stretching. I touch my toes. I take my arms and raise them. I move my body every hour. Just take a break. And then people with children, even though they're going to school virtually, they're not in class the whole 6 hours. They're usually getting a little gap time. That's a great time for you and your kids to get dressed and take a walk around the block. Get out and breathe, because again, you're owning your time, you're owning your day, you're creating your reality. And if you don't be intentional about that, that was another thing I had to work with my kids on, because they wouldn't get dressed till 2 and 3 in the afternoon. And I'm like, why are you not dressed? We ain't got nowhere to go. And I'm like, no, you need to get dressed like you're expecting to go, exactly. Right? Absolutely. So I had to get them into this routine of, okay, around 11 o'clock, we're going to go for a walk. We're going to walk the dog. And then about 2 o'clock, we're going to stop. We're going to walk again. Mm-hmm. And so it was establishing those routines that actually broke the cycle of overeating or feeling really funky because, you just feel like you're trapped. It's just, okay, I walk the neighborhood, I see the trees, I see people out and about. I don't get too close, but, taking a trip to the park, taking a walk, owning your time, owning your day, and just reconditioning yourself, because unfortunately, many people have been conditioned to believe that job, that 9 to 5 method is that gave them an identity. It gave them, it substantiated them. And school didn't help either because you sat in the classroom from 8 to 3. So you've been conditioned since you were a little child to just sit for a certain amount of hours. And so now you get to own your day. You get to own your time.
Absolutely. And there was one thing that when COVID-19 first started, and one thing that the company that I work for did that I thought was awesome, even prior to COVID-19 starting, throughout the day, every day they would have a fitness team that would come around from the health department, from health services, and they would come and tell us to step away from our desk, and we would go out into the hallway, and we all would do these stretches together.
See?
And when COVID-19 happened, what I liked, what they did was they have virtual fitness classes, and they have virtual cooking classes.
There
And
you go.
so it's like they still were doing it, but they just shifted how they was doing it, and they made it accessible to the employees to be able to still be able to participate in it if they choose to do so.
There you go.
They also had classes, discussion classes where they came and said, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on. We are concerned about our employees. We're concerned about what's going on in your mind right now. We're concerned about what you're thinking. We're not just concerned about the fact of you just pushing out our work and producing our work, but we're concerned about
how are you?
How are you? How are you really doing? Are you okay? Because you really can't be totally okay because, like you just said, our world got shifted. It got shook. And so how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the fact that you can't come into the office every day like you was used to doing? I also think that working from home, because I too in my career was able to work from home virtually prior to COVID-19. So I also believe that it actually positioned a lot of companies into how they are actually operating as a company. A lot of things that they felt that could not be done off of the premises is actually getting done.
Yep. People are actually more productive now.
Right, it's getting done. And the thing about it is, and you're right, people are more productive now because now you're forced to have to work because of the fact that you don't have your supervisor or your manager or shadowing you. So you need to let them know that, hey, I am actually at home working. I'm not just sitting back, just saying, well, I'm home. But you still have to, because I'm a senior financial analyst. So you still have to make sure that those numbers are, being done. The reports are getting out. So I think it's making a lot of companies look at, okay, do I really need the real estate?
Efficiency.
Cost efficiency. Like we can cut costs. And how could we cut costs? Well, we can cut costs in the real estate. We can cut costs in how much we're paying for this huge building for all our employees, because not all of them have to be in at the same time, or not all have to even be in. Maybe it's just a matter of coming in once a week. Or twice out of a week, but not on a 5-day basis. So I just think that it's making them look at things differently. And then even also with the company that I work for, we have a fitness center on the premises, and we also have a massage center on the premises. Yeah, I miss massage. And every time I ask my children, they say, "Okay, I'll do it if you pay me." If you pay me.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same. But I think that they're looking at how they're doing things differently, because now they can see, do we really need that in the building, on the premises, on site, when we can just put together a virtual one and just send it via email, and whoever wants to attend can still attend. So I just think that it's just all in how our perception is, how we're handling the situation that we're faced with. And it's just a matter of letting our viewers know that even in this situation, to still stay motivated, to still keep our energy up, and to still be determined to live.
Well, yeah, one of the things that really spoke to me when this pandemic took place was really understanding the precious nature of time. I think we take that for granted.
Yes.
And we allow ourselves to feel busy, but it doesn't mean that we're actually spending quality time with
Absolutely.
ourselves, with our families, with what we do. Those efficiencies that the actual corporate is recognizing is because people are adjusting the quality of their time in their life.
Absolutely.
You know, so why, most of us, especially if we've been in careers for more than 3 to 5 years, can probably do what we need to do within a couple of hours. We don't need a whole day.
And that's the truth.
That's the truth, right?
Yes.
So, most people are recognizing, wait a minute, it never took me 4 hours to get through that report anyway. It only takes me about 30 minutes if I just really focus.
Absolutely. And now that we're home, we're finding, and I'm finding, I can speak for myself, that I'm getting through those reports a whole lot quicker than I was in the office. And that's because I'm doing it, and then I'm moving on to other things. I'm doing it, and I'm making sure that the kids, their homework is done. I'm doing it, and I'm making sure that, because now I still have my career, but then I'm also, full-time mom as well. But then I'm also now a full-time teacher.
Amen.
Also
Amen.
now a full-time chef. So you're absolutely right. So now it's like, whereas if I was sitting in the physical building and I was making sure that will take me for 4 hours and 5 hours, okay, now it's like I'm getting it done, I'm getting it out my way, so I can move on to the next thing that I need
something else
out my way. And then afterwards, it's like you said, adjusting our time to sit down and have that family quality time to say, like, hey, what's going on? And I do know, even with my kids during this COVID-19, I asked them the questions like, how do you feel that, you're not in the school building? How do you feel not being able to be, with your friends?
Talk to your friends.
Face to face, how does that? And I know with my youngest, his thing is like, that bothers me. I miss that. I miss them. I miss the schoolyard. I miss my teachers, With my oldest, his thing was like, I'm okay. No, you can't be okay because the whole world is not okay. So therefore, you can't be okay. You have to be, this had to have affected you in some way or another, some form or another. And the thing about it is, it's not just the kids, like I stated earlier, it's not just the adults, but it's also the children that was affected by this whole process where we're at now as a nation. And it's just a matter of, like you said, adjusting our time now and realizing things that took us longer in the office, and it's no longer our case. Even with the commute, sometimes I still live in New York. Sometimes the New York City train can have me in the tunnel for an hour if something's going on the tracks. So, my commute that should have been, maybe 45 minutes, maybe now have turned into an hour and a half or 2 hours, depending on how bad, the train system is messed up. So now, like you said, we're removing that commute because now
you got the time
getting up and going on the trains, taking the buses and stuff. So now it's just a matter of everyone adjusting their
now you got time. That was time that would be sacrificed in one way. Now what are you doing with that hour or that 45 minutes, and how can you use that hour and 45 minutes more efficiently? And so that's that if you look for the truth in it, like I said, always look for the light. The truth of it is that now we get to own our time, and how we spend our time and how efficient we become is on us. We're not looking for something outside of us to direct it and keep us busy. Now it's how do we want to really spend our day? How do we want to, spend our time? And it can become a lot more advantageous and positive if you look at it in that light. Like, I have more time now to cook. I have more time to exercise. I have more time to pray. Like, I'm not rushed as much as I used to be. And I appreciate that. I sleep better. I feel better. And so it's recognizing the element of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And to make the best of your time. Um, you know, making the best of your time even in the midst of this situation. You know, a lot of people, you know, I love to travel. I love going places.
Mm-hmm.
I love my vacations. And you know, COVID-19 put a stop to a lot of that for a lot of people. But it's making the best of your time in your home, and to do things and have little creative things that you do together, and playing games,
Yep.
simple stuff, not no big complicated things, but simple
It's the
stuff.
small details.
More
That's what I was saying earlier. It's the small details that get you back to you.
yeah,
And I appreciate it. I've played more Uno in my life in the last few months. But my kids appreciate the one-on-one time.
yeah,
And I appreciate the me time. I've made friends when I worked, I never got to see who my postman was. I just know there was always mail out front.
yeah.
And one day I was actually I was outside and I was, tending to the front of my house. And my postman came by, who was pretty cute, by the way. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. Nice to meet you. I never met my postman before, but now it's just really accepting, wait a minute, I now get to see my neighbors. Before, I would come in at 5, 6 in the evening. I'm not trying to see nobody. I'm not trying to talk to nobody. I'm just trying to get in the house. Now I've met my neighbors.
Yes.
So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that the kids have a game that we play, and it's beat the parent game.
yes.
And you have to ask these series of questions, and they get to ask me questions, and I get to ask them questions, and the questions is really geared around how well do they know me as their parent,
Oh,
and
that
how
sounds
I know them
awesome.
as my children. And it is
Yeah.
an awesome game. I mean, listen, even me and my mom played the game.
Yes, I think I'm gonna check it
Against each
out. I'm gonna look for that
other. Like,
game.
yes, beat the parent. It's an awesome game. And I'm telling you, you learn a lot. And it's like, wow, okay. And then you'd be surprised, like, how much they know. And, our kids watch us, and they pay attention. And you'd be surprised how much your kids know about you. So, yes, play that game. And we actually love that game. We've actually grown accustomed to that game during COVID-19. So it's an awesome game. But yes, it's about, just, making a great use of time management. Even though, we're in our homes and not everyone is still in their homes, we do know that we do have the essential workers out there. But for those that are still in the home, and even for the essential workers, it's just a matter of time management, managing our time properly, and still making sure that even in the midst of this, there's still some mobility. We're still being mobile, and we're still moving around, and we're still engaging,
Right.
but that's still social distancing,
Exactly.
because mobility is very important. We have to, like she said earlier, move, exercise, and
Yes, get some air.
get some air. Take a walk around the block if necessary. If there's not a park nearby, then go outside and walk around the block.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. You don't have to do walk fast, but you can take a slow walk. And
Yeah, my granddaughter, I bought her a bicycle, and my whole thing for exercise sometimes is just keeping up with my granddaughter, going around the block, just trying to keep up with her so she don't hit anyone's car or anything.
yeah,
But yeah, like just getting the kids out and then keeping up with them.
absolutely,
But there's so many ways that you could use your time, and again, that's bonding, that's memories.
absolutely.
That's what makes life quality. That's what improves your quality of life, when you can look back and have those memories.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And then just praying, meditating, praying, not just talking, but sitting and being still and listening, listening from God, and let God speak to your spirits, and, to let you know and give you the instructions that you need, that he has for you. and just making sure that, you know, you reach out. Some people don't have anyone. What would you say to people and to our viewers who maybe don't have friends or family to like reach out to? What would you say to them that as to how they can adjust to this environment?
My encouragement to people like that is to always find community. You know, the drawback is that you can't get outside like you used to. But the bonus is that virtually there are many communities that can really be there for you if you choose to get involved. You can't expect things to just hocus pocus and come to you. You have to actually have the intention of getting involved. I've seen so many churches in particular that actually you know, go live and go stream, and they're actually there for your involvement, for you to feel like you're a part of a, you know, a group, and to feel inclusiveness, you know. So you have to seek out that, but you have to have that intention first, and then you have to just like your expectations. Don't expect it to just come to you and find you. You have to go looking for it. And if you're willing to look for it, then there's plenty out there as far as that can aid your process and make it a lot less heavy and you know, boring and redundant. You can,
Absolutely.
you know, so
And that is
yeah.
so cool because even on Facebook, in the section of events, they have different events that consistently being posted. They have salsa classes, they have art classes, they have different virtual things that that's accessible and that's available in order to, you know, have some kind of, you know,
Community.
interaction
Yeah.
with other
Yeah.
people. Absolutely. 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 But this has been an awesome talk. Is there
Thank
anything else
you.
you would like to say to our viewers on today?
Oh, well, I think we covered so much. I really enjoy sitting and, you know, catching up with you and having this time. I just want to encourage the viewers to expand themselves. I think that's the word I want to leave with viewers. It's about expansion. A lot of times, you know, we get in our comfort zones. And so in comfort, we just kind of stick with what we know. This is the best time to expand yourself and to do things that maybe you would have never considered doing before, but saying to yourself, you know what, I'm worth it. I can evolve. I can improve. I can be held accountable. Those things, and expand the loftiness of you, you know. But that in itself is a piece of self-love. So walk away with that. Walk away with knowing that you are limitless. You know, don't limit yourself to a certain thought or a certain lifestyle that may not be your best lifestyle. Be open to growing in many facets of your life, whether it's financial, health, mental wellness, mental health, all of it. You know, like look at the fullness of you and be willing to add to that thing. And then if you're troubled as to where to begin and you have no idea of even how to start, that's what health coaches and life coaches are for. So don't be shy, reach out to me.
Absolutely. And please give the viewers your information again.
So, and on IG, I'm _Black Therapy. And if you want to reach me by email, my name is Aimee. So it's spelled AIMEE.worlds, WORLDS @gmail.com. And so if you're interested in just working with me or just want to have a conversation as to how you can begin your process, I'm available. And again, that's _Black Therapy if you're on IG. I believe it's Mind Meets Soul on Facebook @ Mind Meets Soul. And that's also for Black Therapy. But yeah, I'm available and look forward to talking to you if you're interested.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just put up your Gmail on Facebook. And when this live is over, I'm going to go back and put up the rest of your information so that the viewers can have your information and they can reach out to you. So if you're looking for someone to talk to and you're looking for someone to help you, she is available, she is accessible, and she is here for you. Know that you are not alone. Know that there is help out here. Know that it is important for you to be a better you. And it is time for you to fight to live. Yes, our world was shook. Our world was flipped upside down. But guess what? We are still here. We are alive. And we are still living. And that is because God said he still have purpose and destiny in each one of us that needs to be fulfilled. But why it's being fulfilled, make sure that we are all a better us, spiritually, naturally, and physically. Make sure that we do what we need to do emotionally and mentally to become a better us so that we can live a better life, because now it's time to fight to live. So many of us have generational illnesses that runs in our family and our bloodline from generations to generations, and now it's time for us to take back our power and our authority that God has given us and say, guess what? That illness stops here. That high blood pressure stops here. This stops here. And how does that happen? It happens when we first decide within our minds that we are ready for change, because the word of God lets us know that change comes with the renewing of our minds. So when we decide in our mindset that we are ready for the change, that we can be able to live a healthier life mentally and spiritually, is when the work begins. And know that you are not alone. There are people out here that is willing to help you to get on that road to becoming a better you and a healthier you. And it's time to be healthy with everything that's going on. As she stated earlier, when COVID-19 hit, unfortunately, a lot of people was affected. A lot of people lost their lives, but a lot of our African and Americans lost our lives. Why? Because of our underlying health issues that we do not address, that we put on the back burner. Well, now it's time to pull it off the back burner, and it's time to say, I am ready to live and fight for it. And how to fight for it is recognizing it and taking the necessary steps in order to become a healthier you. Thank you again, Aimee, for joining us.
Thank you.
Talk about Black therapy. Thank you to all our viewers on today that viewed on this topic of fight to live. Thank you again to my pastor, Overseer Dr. Meredith Jordan, for releasing me for this assignment. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I appreciate you, Aimee. I love you. We have to stay.
Love you too.
We have to stay more in contact with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In contact with each other. And I am just so excited with your growth. I'm so excited for how God has stretched you and expanded you. I'm so excited with what God is doing in your life. And I am so glad that God put you on the road to becoming a better you, in spite of everything that you had to go through and you encounter. But I am so glad that you are now in a place of wholeness where you are able to reach back and say, come on, sister, come on, brother, you can do this. And guess what?
Amen.
We can do it together. So I am
awesome.
so
Thank you.
God is doing in your life, and I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. Continue to have a blessed day. Continue to be safe in this COVID-19. Please continue to use precaution. Please continue to use social distancing, and just make sure that you are in a safe environment for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and for your community. And just continue to obey the laws of the land. I love you guys. Blessings, and everyone continue to have a blessed day. Love you.